you're doing a poll a day, basically, or on several different states and different races. You're a busy man, so we appreciate your time. What do you think the state of the race looks like right now in terms of your prognostications for both the House and the Senate?
Yeah, I would say right now you are looking at a House that probably goes significantly. The Republicans pick up 35.
35.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the boldest. Yeah, that's the boldest I've heard so far. I've heard people estimate anywhere from 22 to 30, but 35 is just what's changing in the race that's kind of leading you to say 35.
Well, I've been a believer, and many of you have looked and seen what we put out there for the last little bit, that there's a significant amount of votes that people aren't being able to measure. And you were talking about this earlier, yeah. There's just a lot of people who just refuse to take polls. In 2016, they were shy. In 2020, they were just hesitant to take a poll. But in 2020, we call them submerged. And these are Republicans who just will not, for whatever reason, participate. I mean, whether it's what Biden said, I mean, they just feel like that their government is possibly using polls to make lists of MAGA Republicans for later use. We've had a lot of strange things happen. People report that they're getting our polls, but they're worried that it's not really us. And every time that's been reported, it actually was us. But I can understand a certain level of skepticism that these things might be vehicles by which a list is built up of. And if people feel that way, it doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. They feel that way. And so they're not taking them at all. And so I've said for about 2 months that I think every poll will underestimate Republican turnout, including ours. And so this submerged vote, I would say, could be anywhere from 1.5 to 5.
Wow.
And so there's really no way of measuring it. And that's why, the best we can do is guesstimate it based on the anecdotal evidence we've picked up. But I think that we could be looking at a lot of these seats that are on there. So, like I've said for a while, I think it could be very well 25 to 30 and, even 35. So I would say that's the range. But I expect it's going to be a big turnout and of Republicans. The energy I see tells me that we could be looking at the 35 number very well. And the Senate, I'd say at least 52, quite possibly 53 U.S. senators pick up. Is quite possibly what we're looking at. Yeah.
Robert, if you're an average American and you're watching these polls that come out daily, there's a barrage of polls in your email box, on the news, and so forth. What are some of the tips that you can give people about the biggest deceptions, the biggest lies that polls are able to bring forward, whether we're talking about pollsters or the media or a combination of both? What are the red flags?
Okay, yeah. What I would be looking for, kind of telltale signs that you could be looking at polls that are not, you shouldn't rely on, is one of the simplest things is to go back and look at the 2020 average error rate. Error rate is when you calculate the difference between what a group predicts is going to be the margin between the two candidates and what it actually is. Most of the polling companies out there that polled a lot of that polled a large number of states have a horrible error rate, 3 or 4%. Yeah. We have maintained an error rate of under 2.5 since 2016. And our polls that come out in anticipation of election, the ones they measure in the last 10 days or so. And so that's a pretty good indicator. Now, there aren't a lot of polls this year. And part of the reason is that's a test that a lot of these companies don't like to fail. And they failed royally in 2020, and they failed royally in 2018 and 2016. So the other thing I would look to, though, if you can't find an error rate chart, is look at how many questions they ask. And when you see these ones that are asking 20 or 30 questions, average people aren't taking them. Other things to look for is how big the sample size is. We believe in 1,000 per state. So when you see these ones that are 400 or 500 for an entire state, that's not very effective. That's not a really good way to poll things. And then look at how many methods they use for collection. And so first of all, anything that says an online panel, you can dismiss that immediately. because you got to be really weird to be on an online panel, not average people. And I'm all about polling average people. And if they're just one method, like all live callers, I always say, how many normal Gen Zs and millennials are they talking to that answer a phone from somebody they don't recognize and then talk to them and answer 30 questions? The answer is 0.
Okay. We're going to pull up your latest round of polling. So you have the Washington Senate, where you have Tiffany Smiley. No one's really been talking about this Washington senatorial race because it was thought that incumbent Patty Murray would run away with it. But look at here, you have Patty Murray at 49.4% and Tiffany Smiley within 48.2%. So I presume that is within the margin of error and within striking distance for Tiffany Smiley. The Georgia Senate, you've got Herschel Walker beating Raphael Warnock. That is by a larger margin than most other polls.
Actually not.
Okay.
The only poll that it's more than is every poll that came out after the debate, with the exception of New York Times Siena, which
yes, what is that we were talking about that too, because that just came out yesterday, and it's mind blowing. It seems like an outlier.
Well, first of all, I think if you use a general formula with them and you add 5 points to the Republican and subtract from the Democrat, that's kind of where the truth is with those guys. Okay. One of the things that we found is we talk about polls designed to reflect versus affect the electorate. This is more of an affect the electorate. These are the same people who also told you a week or so ago, and that the Siena told you that 18% of independent women have swung toward the GOP in the last 2 months. 18% of people don't swing anywhere in 2 months. That's not reasonable. What is reasonable is that there's been a pump and dump going on, and that is in August and September. There were a lot of polls that weren't accurate. They were designed to help the Democrats raise money and designed to get the attention of those in Silicon Valley and Wall Street and Hollywood. That now that we're getting close to the election, they got to get a little more closer to the truth, which I think is what's more likely going on. But the polls that have the great track record in Georgia, for example, since the debate, you have Landmark has the long history in Georgia. Dead even, the one from Matt Towery with Insider Advantage, who has equal to us #1 record in Georgia, and I believe Matt has Herschel up more than we did, and I think maybe 3 we had a 2.5, and I think Rasmussen also has a good record in Georgia, has Herschel up by 5. So the ones with a good record in Georgia all show positive or net even with Walker, and the one with the higher error rate, who very rarely gets stuff right in Georgia, is the one that's the outlier.
Lee Zeldin and the New York race, is that all about crime? Is that what is pushing him ahead in the polls?
There are 2 things that are at play at that one, and we're going to elaborate a little bit on this a little later today. So I'm going to give you guys a tweak to something that we're going to put out in an hour or so. 2 things, and this was a supposition until we did this poll. First, crime, certainly biggest issue in New York compared to the other states where crime is #2 and New York's #1. Something else, though, we started picking up. A lot of people kept talking about Cuomo. I'm for Zeldin, but I really like Cuomo. I think Cuomo would do better than Hochul. So we asked people, if the election today were between Cuomo and Zeldin, how would you vote? And the same people that give Zeldin an advantage of right at 1.8, give, if it were Cuomo on the ballot, it would be 55-45 Cuomo. So as we thought, there are a lot of people who, and then asked Cuomo who did better, Cuomo or Hochul, and those numbers were like 60-40 Cuomo. So there are a lot of folks out there who are Cuomo supporters. Maybe they wanted to make a comeback, whatever it is, who are very upset, who are voting for Zeldin because they're very disappointed at what happened to Cuomo, and they think he would have done a better job. And they think if those people, what they're telling us is the choice between Zeldin and Cuomo today, they'd be picking Cuomo. So I think that there are a lot of Cuomo voters that make up the Zeldin coalition, and frankly, I don't know. I don't think Lee Zeldin minds having those people
Yeah.
on his side.
No. Going to the Nevada Senate race, Adam Lexall, you have beating incumbent Catherine Cortez Mastro. What are the issues in Nevada, and is it all about the Hispanic vote?
Well, issues are same, a lot of the same issues, the economy. But the other thing about Nevada, there's a lot of frustrated people in Nevada. A lot of these people in Nevada are in the service industry. They're working, some of them cash, some of them tip paid jobs. That make a significant amount of money with tips. So a couple things that hit them really hard. COVID was devastating to them. They were, a lot of these people, will work hard for a living, weren't able to, because of all the restrictions, they weren't able to work as much as they wanted to. And now we know that some of the restrictions weren't the same on casinos, but a lot of the things that are also not just casinos, a lot of these other industries depend on these service jobs. So they were hit hard by COVID. Now, with this IRS basically going to have to raise all this money with these new agents, everyone knows that, especially even the budget office scored it, that they've got to go out under people who make under $400,000 a year. So that's your cash and your chips and your Uber drivers, and a lot of people that live in Nevada and depend those are now going to have the IRS after them. Add to that the fact that Hispanics are leaving the Democrat Party because the Democrat social agenda is so far away from their beliefs and their strong faith. You kind of create a perfect storm for Republicans to do really well there. Laxalt's a well-known name, and Mastro voted for the IRS agents, voted for the spending that hurt the economy, and did nothing to work against the COVID restrictions that have been such a problem to these service industry workers. So not surprising to me.
I have one final question, and this is about New Hampshire. Polling out of New Hampshire in the senatorial race has been all over the map. Can pollsters accurately poll New Hampshire, and is it in play for the Republicans?
No question, my mind is in play, and I'll tell you the most important reason I think that is 3 months before the Republican primary that was divisive, both candidates, both Bolduc and Morse, were winning that race and beating Hassan. So by more than 3 points. So if the Republicans come back together after a primary, because remember, our last poll, I think we had it 3 points. I think Matt Tower, the Inside Advantage last poll, had it at 1 point. It was just a matter of Republicans coming back together. I mean, but just even this weekend on Meet the Press, Governor Sununu did not get along with at all with General Bolduc. He said, "Hey, I'm supporting the ticket. I'm supporting him." Even when he got, Chuck Todd jumped all over him about, well, how can you support Bolduc? He said, "Hey, these issues that you think are guiding people's votes are not, and the issues that are guiding them are the kind that they're going to replace Hassan. People want Bolduc." And so, yeah, absolutely. I think this thing is in play. I think there's a lot of people who wrote him off. But this guy's built a grassroots network. And what's important, there's very little early vote in New Hampshire. So this thing is playing out toward the very end. Bolduc is finishing very strong. And, even though a lot of the national establishment money has left, there's a lot of other money there. And frankly, Bolduc's built a great machine on the ground. So I think the general I think he's likely going to surprise people in that race. Yeah.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry about the technical issues there at the start. We appreciate your expertise, and we will be following your polls leading up into Election Day.
Thanks, Robert.
Absolutely.